I miss him. I kick myself for not working on it with him at the time. You know how it says, you always say, oh, there'll be time. And sometimes time runs out.
I'm Anthony Breznican of the Kingcast, and you just heard Stephen King talking about writing his newest novel, Talisman 3, the last book in a trilogy that he started more than 40 years ago with his late friend, the poet and fellow horror writer, Peter Straub. In the early 1980s, King joined forces with Straub on an epic fantasy novel. It was called The Talisman, and it was about a 12-year-old boy named Jack Sawyer who must locate a mystical pendant to save his mother's life. To get it, he has to travel between our world and a parallel universe called the Territories, a dimension that's full of magic and monsters. In 2001, Straub and King joined up again to publish the sequel, Black House, in which a grown-up Jack Sawyer goes on the hunt for a child killer who is secretly in league with the dimension-collapsing being known as the Crimson King, the primary villain of King's own Dark Tower series. Several years ago, Straub pitched King on an idea for a third Talisman novel, but that possibility seemed to end when Straub died in 2022. Only recently, King revealed on Threads that he was picking up the idea and running with it. On the Kingcast, we talked to him about reviving Straub's idea and writing it solo this time while still conjuring the spirit of his old friend. My colleague Eric Vespe started out by asking him about the unusual move of announcing a novel while in progress.
We were talking about how you usually don't talk about what you're writing as you're writing it. And you've gone out and been very public about how you're writing Talisman 3 now. Is there a reason why this one you just felt like sharing? Because that was pretty unprompted. You were just like, you know what, I'm going to share with the masses that I'm working on Talisman 3.
My grandfather used to say, Stephen, this is when I was a kid, he'd say, Stephen, when you open your mouth, all your guts fall out.
Right.
I talk about a lot of stuff. I get enthused by things, I get whipped up. Yeah. And this book has been exciting to work on for a lot of reasons because, man, Peter's not here to work on the book with me. That bothers me. Peter was a really good guy, and I've been channeling him like a motherfucker while I'm working on Talisman 3. I find myself using his verbs. People don't necessarily walk into a room, they bustle into a room, because that's a very Straubian word. And I'm using as much of that as I can. And of course, the major thing is that, I miss him. I kick myself for not working on it with him at the time. You know how it says, you always say, oh, there'll be time. And sometimes time runs out. And that was the case and with that. But man, I just, it's great to be back in the Territories of Midworld. I mean, they're the same thing. By the end of Black House, it's pretty obvious that the Territories are Midworld and Midworld is the Territories. But most of the time, I keep it to myself because it's like what Ben Mears says in Salem's Lot. You talk about a project, you piss it all out on the ground.
Right.
And I just, it's really a superstitious thing. I feel jinxed, so yeah, I'm careful about it.
Now, the idea for Talisman 3, I remember a few years back, we did an interview and you said that Peter had an idea that he threw your way. Is that idea in this book? Is that the seed of it?
Yeah, it is. He wrote me an email, which, like an idiot, I didn't save. But look in my office, I can't find anything anywhere. I've got notes everywhere, and here's some notes on the Glock 26 that I needed, YouTube videos and everything like that. So Peter sent me this thing, and he sent me a book that was called Red-Headed Peckerwood, and it was about Charles Starkweather, and it's kind of like an artistic book. Starkweather was a guy who went on a rampage in 1958 and with his girlfriend, Carol Ann Fugate. And Peter wanted to use that in a certain way that I remember a little bit about, and it came clearer to me once I started to work on the book.
Right.
So that was just like a takeoff point. I'm trying to channel his voice as much as I can.